We've all been there. There's a lot of changes happening at work right now, and you have your next meeting with your manager coming up in about a week. And along with all these changes come a lot of questions from you. Maybe something along the lines of pay or what new responsibilities you might have. But you plan to sort out all these questions in your next one-on-one. The day finally comes, you walk into your meeting with your manager, and most likely one of two things happens. Either A, you end up talking about stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with your job or your work, or B, the conversation is completely one-sided with either you or your manager taking up the entire meeting talking. The meeting ends and you walk out and you realize that you never actually got answers to the questions that you had or got any real feedback. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Tyler Warlow and I go by The Mengineer. I make videos on how to improve your life through your confidence, capabilities, and overall happiness. The situation that I just described is incredibly common among the workforce. In fact, I experienced it myself when I first started working my job out of college. So I decided I would make this video on how to have more effective one-on-ones with your manager. This is going to be a helpful video for you if you're starting your career or even if you've been a long-standing employee. If this topic sounds interesting to you, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to join me along in this self-improvement journey. And be sure to stick around to the end because in my opinion, that is the most important tip. But going ahead and jumping right into it is the first thing that I'm going to say is that you want to make an agenda for your one-on-ones with your manager. And the reason that I say this is important is because it's going to help you prepare for what you want to talk about. There are a few different ways that you can approach this. If your manager is more formal, you can actually write out a developed agenda and send it to them so that way they know the course of the meeting and what is going to happen, and they can provide you maybe their own agenda for what they would also like to say. If your manager is less formal and y'all tend to have a little bit more personal one-on-ones, then you can just develop a loose agenda that you keep track of in your own notes so that way you have an idea of what your talking points are and what questions you want to make sure you get answers to. Going into these meetings without a one-on-one is like going into it without a plan. It leaves a lot of risk for the meeting to just become a waste of time for both of you as you just kind of end up casually talking about things that have nothing to do with your work. Or maybe you only land on one question out of the many that you had. The agenda can help you keep a list of all those questions so you make sure you get the chance to talk about each one of them. Every manager's style is a little bit different, so you don't necessarily have to send this agenda to your management, but it's just good for you to have, and if they would like to have it as well, it's good for them. So make sure that you have some sort of framework in place for your next meeting before you go into it. The next thing I'm going to say is going to seem like common sense, but a lot of people don't do it, and that's going to be respecting your manager's time. This meeting is going to be time out of both of y'all's days, and while you might be busy, your manager is likely even more busy. First off, I recommend scheduling your meeting in advance so that your manager has plenty of notice for when you want to talk to them. Secondly, whenever that day comes for the meeting, I recommend that you reach out at the beginning of the day and just make sure that the time still works for the both of you. Sometimes things come up and it can be extremely frustrating on both ends when there's a last-minute cancellation. But if you can check in ahead of time and sometimes steer clear of those by rescheduling the meeting if need be, that avoids that frustration and headache on both ends. Now, if everything is good and you're both still able to come to the meeting, make sure that you come to the meeting on time. Showing up on time shows a certain level of respect for your manager's time, and as you do that, they're going to be sure to maintain that same level of respect with you. Showing up on time usually indicates to your manager that you respect their time and that you pay attention to the details, which can leave a good impression. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to have less to do with the meeting itself and more the relationship with your manager. I highly recommend taking a little bit of time in your meeting to catch up with one another and talk about personal things outside of the realm of work. Make sure not to let it go too long because again, you want to make sure that you're getting the opportunity to talk about all the things on your agenda, but you do want to take this opportunity to build a little bit of a relationship between you and your manager. And that means in future one-on-ones, you'll be able to touch back on that information that you've learned about them. Everyone appreciates when you're able to remember things about them. And usually when you show interest in someone else, they will typically return the favor. By building this relationship with your manager early on, you're starting to build trust in one another. Building trust with your manager is important in several ways. It makes it so they're less likely to micromanage you, and usually that will come along with trusting you to do the things that you say you're going to do. If they get to know you on a personal level as well as your personal beliefs, morals, and values, they get to know the type of person that you are. So if they can see that you're a hard worker and that you have strong values, then they know that they can trust you to do what you say you're going to do. This can also make it easier for them to advocate for you in various situations. For instance, they might be more likely to recommend you for a promotion, or they could be more likely to push and advocate for you to get some time off of work in case of an emergency situation happening. On top of all of this, by getting to have a personal connection with your manager, you're putting a face to the name. It is much harder to ignore or potentially hurt someone when they have developed a human connection to that person. Because of all those benefits that I just described, that is why I recommend getting to know your manager a little bit. But what about you guys? Do you like to get to know your coworkers on a personal level? I know that that's not for everyone, but be sure to let me know with a comment down below. I like to hear about y'all's experiences, and I like to reply to each and every one of the comments. But moving on to the next tip, I always recommend following up with an email. Now there's a couple caveats to this. I recommend that you're taking notes during your meeting and noting down important things that you discuss. Because trust me, a lot of people go into meetings thinking that they will remember the things that their manager says, but a lot of times, and this has happened to me personally, you end up getting busy and doing other work and you end up forgetting what your manager said and having to reach out and ask them again, which can be a little bit frustrating for the manager given that you just had a whole conversation about it. So take good notes on your meeting and especially on those important talking points that you noted in your agenda. Then afterwards, follow up with an email where you summarize those key takeaways. This follow-up email is going to ensure that both you and your manager are on the same page. The other benefit of sending that follow-up email is that it kind of can help protect you a little bit. So say that your manager backtracks on something that they said. You can point to this follow-up email that you sent and say that they did confirm or that they just never confirmed what you were saying, so this was why you were under that impression. I hope that it never comes down to that for you, but it's always nice to have a paper trail just in case stuff like that happens. And finally, my number one most important tip that I will say that you need to apply to your one-on-ones is making sure that you advocate for yourself. No one can know what you are aiming or striving to do without you communicating what your goals are. For instance, there's usually several different paths that you can take in a company, and we'll use my consulting experience for example. You can go down the more technical route where you become a subject matter expert and people refer to you and lean on you for guidance on the technical side of things. Or you can go the management route where you handle more of the day-to-day management of the project and interacting with the people to help keep the project moving. A strong employee is going to be pretty strong in both of these areas. So the issue with that is that the manager might try to push you down a path that you really don't necessarily want to go down. You might be more interested on the people management side of things, and you're really not a huge fan of the technical work. But because of how well you do on your day-to-day basis, your manager starts pushing you down that technical progression because you never spoke to them about how your goal is actually to be on the management side of things. Additionally, how can they know that you want to aim for a large pay raise or a promotion if you never communicate that? So those are just a few examples. Secondly, advocating for yourself is going to help your manager have an idea of all the work that you're doing. In a lot of companies, the management structure results in the direct manager not having a lot of face-to-face time with the employee, and they don't necessarily have involvement in the project the employee is working on. This leads to the situation where management has to lean on third-party information and trust to get good, valuable feedback on how you are doing. The issue with that, in my opinion, is that when it comes from third-party sources, everyone is different. People give feedback very differently. And sometimes you run into the issue where because you're doing good work, the people who you're doing work for don't really pay that much attention to you. So then when your manager asks for feedback, they can't really give really solid feedback. And so that can sometimes lead to a little bit of hesitancy on the management side to wanting to help push you forward because they don't necessarily know how accurate the information that they're getting is. Use this as an opportunity to describe to your manager the type of work that you're doing. And I especially think it's important that if you are encountering any challenges, that you describe to them what those challenges are and how you are personally overcoming them. If you're dealing with a difficult client, describe to your manager the roadblocks that have been in place because of the client, and then let them know how you've worked around that. This is giving your manager information directly from you on the work that you're doing and your problem-solving skills. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is use some common sense and do not lie to your manager. It is very easy to fact check you. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen an employee get fired because they were coming to a client site, they would leave halfway through the day and not do any more work. And then when a manager would finally check in with the client would be like, yeah, we haven't seen this person pretty much all day. And then it's very easy to go look through record books and see how often someone was coming through security. So do not lie, because it's very easy to find out whether or not you are or not. And a lot of times it can result in pretty severe consequences. But that's gonna bring us to the end of the video, everyone. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you found the information in this video to be helpful or informative at all, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to join me on this self-improvement journey. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or opinions of your own, be sure to let me know with a comment down below. But if you're interested in more videos like this one where I give career advice, be sure to check out this video right here where I talk about starting your first solo project. If you're interested in some of my more recent videos, be sure to check out this video right here. But until the next time, this is the Mengineer, signing off.